Just like genius, leadership does not grow in a vacuum. And by that I mean that the ideas that are birthed in the concepts of leadership, much like the ideas birthed in the concept and process of genius, very seldom do those have only the input of the original mental creator. I'm going to expound on that a little bit, but my encouragement to you is to understand that as a leader, the ideas that you have floating around in your head, while they may be phenomenal and valid and powerful and earth-shattering, or at least world-changing, if they never leave your head, they have no value. And if they leave your head with only the perspective of your life, they have significantly diminished value. Welcome to Leading Leaders Podcast, 5-minute videos, 5 days a week. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. Over the last couple of days, I've had a chance to watch, especially with all the icy days in Texas, quite a few documentaries. One of my favorite things to do. I love to read, I love to learn, and watching these documentaries gives me insight to things that, frankly, I wouldn't take time to read because the book would be thousands of pages, where the video is, it's an hour long or less. One of those documentaries I watched was a mini-series on Bill Gates. I think it's called Inside the Brain of Bill Gates. In the concepts that he approaches from all the way back in middle school and high school up till today. Now, those concepts are obviously computers, right? Because that's where he started with the whole Microsoft thing. But also how to attack world issues, global issues. And this is part of what started to tease my brain, because what I watched, and yes, I know that as with anything, it's all about the narrative. The documentary was very favorable toward Mr. Gates, and there may be some things that other people will go, well, it wasn't like that, or I don't really like him because of, and that's fine, I get it. But here's the reality. This is a guy who took his wealth and his intellect, both his ability to perceive and his ability to remember, and put those ideas together with other people that by his own admission were smarter than him, at least in certain areas. Now, he is a voracious reader. I'm jealous of his library, the giant dome of a library in his home that's all the way to the ceiling and then some, and has its own catwalk. I'm jealous of his library, but he wouldn't own that many books if he wasn't the kind of guy to read them, which tells me he does everything that he can on his own to understand exhaustively the concepts and the topics that he's going to talk about. He also, though, surrounds himself with people who are experts on those topics, even to the point of incentivizing people to do work that they otherwise would have no interest in doing. It doesn't benefit them long-term or short-term to think about the things that he wants to think about. But Bill Gates has the financial position to be able to pay people to think about these things. That's actually a very powerful tool. In so doing, he brought in a guy, Nathan, I can't remember Nathan's last name, but he came to mind because I saw him on another documentary. And it's about the creativity of Nathan's brain. See, Nathan has written thousands of pages of books on bread. Just bread. But he's also studied asteroids and the movement of the dinosaurs' tails and a way to make a new nuclear power plant that doesn't create nuclear waste when it's done. Who'd have thought the guy who makes bread can also make a nuclear power plant? And the point that I'm bringing up is that we often, in leadership and our own thinking capacities, we think to the extent of our ability to think. We ponder, we consider, we might read up on some resources, and then we want to go to town with, go to the farm with this information, this knowledge, this wisdom. And that's a good thing, unless it causes you to be both selfish and incomplete, because there are plenty of people who have great ideas that all on their own are not that great. I love the way John Maxwell says it. He says, when you've got a new idea, when you're thinking on something, you've got to take that dog out for a walk. You've got to let other people hear the thoughts and kind of poke at it a little bit and hear the thoughts and maybe add to it a little bit, or hear the thoughts and go, no, you can't do it that way, and here's why. because those other voices are going to add value to your own. If you're a leader in any size organization, and every idea that gets floated by the board gets put into place for the organization is yours and yours alone, the chances are there are going to be people who have a hard time implementing it because they don't think like you. There are going to be people who have a hard time executing the order, so to speak, because they don't believe what you believe. They don't have the same background or perceptions that you have. The result of that is going to be a failure of the process. That doesn't mean the idea is bad. It just means the execution has its own limits. The execution of an idea that is born inside the head of one individual and never tested by others, never poked by others, is a challenge. I'll close with this example. It's in the documentary. If you watch the documentary, you'll see it. In the documentary on Bill Gates, there's a time where they asked Melinda Gates, what are your thoughts on this whole Bill Melinda Gates Foundation thing? He says you're an equal partner, but for years he was the forefront. And she says, there's a difference in the way he thinks. Now, you also have to know that she was actually an employee at Microsoft when they met, so she's no dummy on her own. She's a pretty bright woman. But she said, when we went to this idea of how do we eliminate some of the human waste in the water in places around the world, millions of dollars were spent trying to develop a new toilet. And she said they did all the science and they figured out how to make it work and how it was going to burn and then clean and then create new water. And that was all brilliant. She said the question I asked when I went into the communities where these single moms were dealing with their kids and how do you teach them to properly use the facility, even if there's a brand new one, even if it does what it's supposed to do for the environment, how do you teach them to use it? Because they've always just done it in the street. She said, what I realized was these moms were terrified to let their children out of their sight because of the high levels of crime and kidnapping and sexual abuse and sexual assault. She said the women didn't want to use a public toilet if the wall was low enough that somebody could peek over the top of it and they would have no privacy. They didn't want to use a public toilet if it meant closing the door and leaving their children out of visual sight. They wanted a room big enough for everybody to be in. They didn't want to use a toilet that was going to prevent them from being good moms just to be able to go to the toilet in a clean, safe environment. See, the kind of thinking that allows you to think inside a vacuum, the leadership concepts that you ponder on your own and you think, hey, this would be a good thing for our organization. This would be a good thing for our group. This would be a good thing for our world. Those are phenomenal. That's great. Keep doing that. But if you don't take that dog out for a walk and allow that thought to come in and go, okay, well, how does it impact someone other than me? Someone of a different background, a different education level, a different income level, a different race? What if the ideas that I have in mind would actually hurt other people but benefit me? Are they still good ideas? Probably not. But if they're only developed inside your head and they're never exercised with others, never poked at, prodded at, stretched at, pulled on, squashed by others, chances are you're going to have a leadership result that serves you but nobody else. That's my challenge for you today. If you're a leader in any capacity, if you're making decisions that impact yourself and others, then take the time to honor others in that process. Bring them into the collaboration of your idea. Bill Gates is a computer guy, but he spent millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars fighting polio, looking for clean water, fighting sanitation, looking for solutions to energy. And while I wouldn't say at this point in my life, my understanding of him is that he's a hero, I would say he's a collaborator. He's a guy who spent a lot of time and a lot of money trying to find solutions that a lot of people will go, you're a computer guy. It's none of your business. It's not even your problem. And that is a leadership quality that I admire. I also like the fact that he has a lot of books because I like books. If you're a leader, don't think that you can be a genius in leadership or any other topic, or that you can be a leader in policies and concepts and do it in a vacuum, because it may benefit you, but it will fail others in the process. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.